Hey YouTube fans, I want to give you an update on my cuttings. It's been 2 weeks and a day since we took these cuttings. I want to share my successes, which looks like just a couple, and my failures. And I want you to comment below. There's a lot of videos on YouTube, a lot of different ways to do it. And as I mentioned in my original video, I've had varied success on cuttings. The whole point of this video is to give you an update, but also to let you know that no matter what you do, unless you have a professional misting system or you do it the same way over and over again, you are going to have varied success, and some of that might be out of your hands. And I'll talk about that now with regards to variety. So if you are seeing this video for the first time, about 2 weeks ago from the main garden, I took some Fortuniana that was the sucker. A lot of my plants are grafted on that, so the suckers were coming up and they're about pencil thickness. So I rooted or attempted to root about 12 of those, and since I was doing it anyway, I had a couple other 6 and 4 packs of Double Delight, Mr. Lincoln, some older varieties that I wanted to try to root. Much like a lot of people, I used this Sterilite container, and it has a clear top, and it's been mostly covered. I left it vented a little bit because we have been quite hot. You'll see I'm under a tree and it does face the east, so in the morning I get a little direct sun about 7, 8 in the morning, then filtered sun through mid-morning, and then pretty much full shade. The sun's out right now and I'm in full shade over here, so it's a pretty shady spot. And the other container I've used, Mike Kincaid, I saw one of his videos, and a lot of folks have done this. This is a juice bottle. I've got 3 cuttings in there, and it's been left open on top. And at least a couple times a day, I come out here and I mist the leaves. And from what I read, it's not, I mean, it does keep moisture in the little greenhouse I have here, but it's really more for keeping the leaf surface cool. I've been watching a lot of different videos. They haven't usually been out of this. I've left this container alone, again, slightly opened to allow it to vent. But I've just taken them out today because of video purposes. But we're in and out of the sun, and we're quite drizzly and misty today, so it's a very humid and moist day. So I wanted to do the video update. But my point about the misting, I was just concerned that most of my cuttings in the past, when they failed, this is what's happened. They start to rot from the bottom up. And the soil mix I've used is Pro Mix, which has some perlite in it. And I actually have, these are empty 4 and 6 packs. But I actually have it resting on a bed of soil. You see, it's pretty wet, but I thought that would give it added drainage, that it wasn't sitting at the bottom of an empty container with standing water. It was on top of some potting soil. So as you can tell, some of them have just failed. I'm going to leave them alone to see what happens, but when you start to see this, this rotting, that's a sign that they're not taking. So I always thought it was too much moisture. It could be. I mean, these aren't dripping with water. This is well-drained soil. I may buy some banded pots, which have more airspace on the bottom. You can see these have holes. So I always thought it was overwatering, and it's quite discouraging when you see this. So I've pretty much chalked this up to a fail. I looked a little closer though, and this is the cane drying out. I don't know if you can see those lines. So some of the failures might not exactly be rotting, even though these are technically rotting from the bottom. I'm going to let these go and see what happens. It could be that the cane is just dying and the rotting is a byproduct of that. Curious anybody watching if they want to comment below on what they think. But this is definitely rotting. I don't know if it's from overwatering or again the cane's just desiccating. You can see the lines there that this cane has dried out. So I did buy a timing device. I'll share that with you later when I get my mist house set up. But for about $30 on Amazon, I found something that would go as low as a 5-second interval, which is pretty cool, or 5-second duration, I think 30-second intervals. But the main point is to keep moisture, but also to keep the leaf surface wet. Because from the research I've done, if the leaf surface dries out, especially during hot weather, it really transpires a lot of moisture. So that's the number one way these things dry out, is getting too hot and the leaf surface being hot. And so they transpire. So that's a fail on those Fortuniana. Now this other pack of Fortuniana don't look quite as bad. I don't see any rot off the top of them, or at the bottom, excuse me, but off the bat, these look okay. So I'm optimistic. I look at the bottom, I don't see any roots yet. And I should point out, even with the failures, there's a couple that look okay. So I'm crossing my fingers that they still might take, but I'm not overly optimistic. So then you come to this group, and on first glance, they look a lot better. Green leaves, I don't see any rot. These are Double Delight. There's one geranium there that obviously is not going to make it, so that was a fail. But for the most part, at least these two Double Delight, and this one here is not quite as good looking, but 2 to maybe 3 Double Delight look pretty healthy. This is, again, 15 days later, and I flip them over, and what do I see? Roots. So these are actually rooting. You can see the little roots coming out of the bottom of that. Hopefully you can see that okay. And you can kind of tell they're doing well. They've still got their green leaves. They're looking very, very healthy. Trying to get a better angle on this that's in focus. So they're looking really healthy on top. This one here, maybe not as much. The leaves are yellowing. That doesn't always mean it's not going to make it, but so far I don't see any roots coming out. But I definitely have a root from that one and a root from that one. So that's exciting. So I know those are rooting. And then when I look at my other ones, I've got Dublin and a few other older varieties. Not quite yet. I don't see any roots coming out of the bottom, but I'm also optimistic. This is a Double Delight on the right and Dublin on the left. That looks healthy, so I'm optimistic those might take. So the 2-week and 1-day update, some of them have rooted. The point, like I said, was to update you on the status. And remember I mentioned variety. Fortuniana are hard to root without a misting house. That's what the research shows, that they are very, very hard to root. Double Delight might be a variety that's a lot easier. And I've noticed this. I've taken some cuttings off of Folklore or an older rose like Yolande de Aragon, and every time it seems like I root them, they take. Whereas other varieties that I've gotten, they just don't take off ever. So don't be too hard on yourself. Do some experimenting. Obviously, if you find something successful, try to stick with it in terms of your propagation methods. But also pay attention to the variety. Some are just going to be harder than others. I'm optimistic that some of these Fortuniana look good and they'll take. If they do, my goal is to plant one bush at the back of our property so that I will use that for grafting and future propagation. All I want is one of these 12 or 11 to take, and I'll be in business here. If not, I'll go back to the drawing board. And going back to the drawing board is going to be hanging some drip emitters, misters in this location and having them run on a timer. Some of my plants still have some whips on them, so I might still be able to do a little rooting here in midsummer. We'll see. So that's it. Exciting news. Along with some bad news on the cuttings. Again, our first 2 roots are coming out. Hopefully you can see those coming out of the bottom clear as day. And that's only after just over 2 weeks, so that's pretty good. Hope everyone's doing well. We'll continue to update you on these cuttings throughout the rest of the summer. It's July now, so hopefully they continue to grow. And I'll eventually move them to some pots, and we'll keep updating you on the status. Have a good one, everybody.